So I'm going to show you how you can learn the altered scale 3 notes per string scale shapes all the way up and down the neck. Learning these positions using a kind of a more traditional approach can be an absolute nightmare, but I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to do this in a matter of 10 minutes or so. The other thing I want to do is to just show you how well these shapes blend with the 3 notes per string scale shapes as well. So I'll be going through that in more detail. And actually how I use these, I mentally just change between the 3 notes per string shapes and the cage shapes as I'm recording as well. So I'll demonstrate that. So this is actually a sister video to one I recorded a couple of weeks ago. You should really check that one out if you've not already seen it, because this is just a continuation of that. And I'm taking the ideas and the patterns that I created in that, and I'm using those to move forward to create the 3 notes per string scale shape. So check that out if you haven't already seen it. The other nice thing about that is it actually introduces the altered scale from the point of view of a really common chord change that you use it in. So if you approach it from the approach that I use in that video, you'll know how to transition from an altered dominant to a minor tonic using that approach as well. So check that out. The other thing I'm going to focus on is the caged versus 3 notes per string approach to learning these scales. I find it really useful to have both sort of methodologies available to me. Caged is really powerful in that it puts everything in a context. It puts everything in context with everything else. So the chords, the pentatonics, the scales, all kind of sit together, and you can see how you can cleanly move from one to the other. That's a really powerful thing you get from caged. 3 notes per string, you get consistency. Like I say, you get 3 notes on every string, which means any kind of motor skills that you've developed starts to be able to transform from one shape to another really quite straightforwardly, because you approach the picking in the same way and you approach the scale shapes in the same way, and every position is laid out in the same way as well. So that's the power you get from 3 notes per string. And obviously if you can blend both of these two principles into one system, which is what I like to do, then you get the best of both worlds. So the starting point for this video is where the previous video left off. So let's zoom in and I'll see if I can demonstrate. So in my previous video, I pointed out that altered scales can be thought of as being built from 3 building blocks. The first one I color-coded red, which was just on one string, which is just 3 notes which had a tone apart. And then below that we had a green string where we had a semitone and a tone between them. And then below that we had a blue box which had a 2-note string and then 2 3-note strings as well. And so that blue box really is the only thing we need to be able to handle when we move to a 3 notes per string approach, because obviously that's the box that has this 2 notes on a string that we need to deal with. And so that's where we're going to focus. So let me introduce the secret sauce to this video, which is one simple shape. It sits across 3 strings and has 3 notes per string, not surprisingly. So let's zoom in and we'll have a look at that. So the shape we're going to memorize looks like this. So hopefully you can see it's dead easy to memorize, because you've got on the upper string, you've got 3 notes separated by a tone, the string below, 3 notes where you've got a semitone and a tone, and below 3 notes where are all separated by a tone again. And I kind of visualize this backward facing arrowhead at the front of it. And the other thing, the more eagle-eyed of you may spot, is there's that blue box that we talked about before. And so it's just contained within this yellow box. Yeah? And below this, the thing to try and visualize is another blue box kind of hanging off the bottom here. And obviously if I had a 7-string guitar, I'd play the 3rd string of that blue box. So that's the one thing, the one new piece of information we've got to memorize. And with that, we can turn all of the previous scale shapes into 3 notes per string scale shapes. So that's what I want to demonstrate next. Okay, let's start with that first scale shape that we created last time. And it looks like this. say, that has that blue box in the middle there with the 2 notes. Yeah, and we can deal with that in one of 2 ways. We can just substitute for that yellow box, just drop it straight in instead of that blue box. And like I said before, below that yellow box, we can imagine there's a new blue box there. Yeah, and that finishes a scale shape. So that gives us the yellow, and then that blue box finishing off at the bottom there. Yeah, or we could do it the other way. We've got the blue box, which is just here. There's 2 notes. And so if you remember in my previous videos, the tuning between the G and the B string makes shapes distort when they play them across those strings, or when you move them to or from those strings. But within that shape, hopefully you can see, here's the yellow box. And then if I offset it by 1 fret because of the G to B string tuning, we've got the middle string and then the upper string. So within this scale shape ascending, we've got the red and then the bottom part of the blue box, and then we turn the top part into that yellow box. Okay, so that's just created 2 3 notes per string scale shapes from this original cage position. And I can choose to play it either as a cage shape or as a 3 notes per string just there, or just there. Okay, let's look at the second position. So it starts with the blue box, to red, to green, and there's the blue at the bottom. So there's a number of things we could do here. First thing is we could just start with that yellow box, just drop it straight in its place. And you can see we're just creating the same scale shape that we just previously played through. So that's one way of doing it. The other thing we could do is stretch out on that top string. So that top string, if you like, would have a whole yellow box above it. So just reaching out with an extra note turns, and reaching out at the bottom turns this scale into a 3 notes per string scale shape. So that's the other thing that we could do. Or even we could start at the bottom. So we know we've got 2 notes of that blue box at the bottom. So I could just replace that with the yellow box, and then above that we have the green box, then the red, and then the blue. Yeah, which actually takes me straight to the next position up. Okay, so the third cage position would just look like this. It'll have the bottom of the blue box there, the red box, the green box, and then the blue just here. Now we could just use the previous shape. That would drop us straight back into it again, you know. But the other thing we could do is start from the top of the bottom blue box here. And we know that that moves into yellow box, so we could transform that into a yellow box. And then we've got the green box above. And that takes us actually to the next shape up. So the fourth position then, the cage position looked like this, if you remember. 2 notes on the B string, 3 notes, and then there's a red shape and the green shape below. So we've got the 2 notes on the B string, and so it's as easy as just stretching out. So if we did all of that from the bottom, we'd have the green, and that gives us our next 3 notes per string scale shape. Simple as that. Okay, so the fifth position just looks like this. Second 2 strings from the blue box, and move into the red, green, and then the blue box starts again. 2 notes, and then 3 strings there. So just like before, we can start from the bottom and replace this with that yellow box. And then we're up to the green box. And this is the position, the first position that we created back down here again. So we've gone full circle all the way through all of the positions going up the neck. So play around with these ideas, see if you can acclimatize to them, see if you can get used to that idea of changing between that caged approach and that 3 notes per string scale approach. As I say, I do that right in the middle of my solos. I decide whether I want to play one kind of scale or another, or whether I'm going to use this to transition, change positions. It's all available to you once you get used to this idea. So this approach to unifying caged and 3 notes per string is available to you with the standard major scale as well. And I did create a video. I'll put a link up there or somewhere that shows you how to do this. Otherwise, we'll chat next time. Goodbye.